History rarely remembers villains as they saw themselves. Every act of destruction, you see, often begins wrapped in conviction. We're about to enter minds that truly believed they were saving the world, cleansing it, guiding it, or restoring some lost balance. For them, certainty burned brighter than doubt, and morality was just something that bent around their purpose. When people believe they are chosen, whether by fate, gods, or destiny, cruelty can become a duty. Bloodshed becomes a sacrifice. Throughout ancient legends and early empires, the most feared figures weren't mindless monsters. They were leaders, priests, and visionaries, utterly convinced that only they understood what the world needed. In lost civilizations, rulers carved their righteousness into stone. They commissioned maps that read through territories not as conquest, but as destiny. They created myths that framed their expansion as divine instruction. And when climate shifts, droughts, and floods intensified fear, these leaders saw their harsh measures as an act of mercy. Survival, they argued, demanded absolute control. Archaeology now uncovers cities abandoned not just by disaster, but by ideology. Temples became command centers, and knowledge was weaponized. Forbidden texts were sealed away to preserve a single, official narrative, one where obedience equaled salvation, and resistance was a betrayal of the future they claimed to protect. Villains often emerged from intellect, not chaos. They studied astronomy, engineering, and psychology, believing their mastery justified their authority. Ancient maps and censored manuscripts show how these leaders modeled themselves as restorers of a lost golden age. Their brutal actions were just temporary necessities, they claimed, because history could be corrected, purified, and steered. Anyone who opposed them was simply an obstacle to harmony. Modern technology complicates these simple narratives. Satellites can expose erased borders, and digital archaeology can reconstruct destroyed cities. Climate data confirms that many so-called villains acted during times of genuine environmental stress, which only reinforced their belief that extreme solutions were heroic. Yet, even today, political influence filters our interpretation, softening blame or amplifying justifications. Why? Because admitting that villainy can be born from absolute certainty forces us to confront our own capacity for moral blindness. So, history remains curated, presenting us with simplified heroes and monsters. It's easier than examining how righteousness, when unchecked, becomes one of humanity's most dangerous tools. As we peel back the layers, the line between hero and villain blurs. It becomes about intention rather than outcome. It reveals that belief is the most powerful weapon ever wielded. Because when individuals are convinced they are right, maps are redrawn, texts are burned, and lives are sacrificed for a future that exists only in their imagination. The most dangerous villains in history never doubted themselves, not even for a moment, as the consequences gathered silently behind them. The story doesn't end when the villain is defeated. Villainy, when it's rooted in unshakable self-belief, doesn't just die. It lingers in the systems, the borders, and the ideologies we inherit. When history is written by conviction instead of consequence, the narrative survives even as the damage spreads. Archaeology shows us this pattern. Successive states would reuse the monuments, myths, and maps of fallen rulers. They kept the illusion of a heroic purpose alive, while conveniently forgetting the brutality that built it. This way, the belief in righteous domination outlived the original architects, long after they vanished into ruin and ash. Today, modern technology is stripping away that inherited certainty. Artificial intelligence reconstructs censored records, satellites reveal erased populations, and climate science confirms that many so-called heroic justifications were just reactions to environmental stress, badly managed by leadership. It was never a destiny. It was villains shifting blame to protect their own identity. Yet, this truth is hard to accept. Political influence still dictates which histories are taught, which data gets attention, and which obvious parallels are ignored. The same old logic reemerges in new language, where control is called protection and sacrifice is demanded from those who are least responsible for the crisis. It's a pattern refined over millennia. The chilling truth is, villains who thought they were heroes rarely acted alone. They were enabled by societies willing to trade moral complexity for simple certainty, because certainty feels safe in times of chaos. But archaeology reveals that societal collapse often followed periods of intense ideological unity, not division. Dissent was silenced, and leaders were surrounded by agreement instead of reality. When climate, economy, or invasion finally shattered the illusion, there was nothing left to adapt. Only ruins, empty cities, and myths, insisting that the destruction was noble, unavoidable, and justified by a higher purpose. This same psychological architecture persists today, amplified by technology that accelerates belief, filters information, and rewards outrage over reflection. It's easier than ever to cast yourself as a hero while causing harm on a massive scale. History warns us, when belief outruns empathy, data, and memory, catastrophe follows. Quietly at first, and then all at once. The signs are always there, written in past collapses, rising seas, and repeating rhetoric, but they are ignored by those convinced their mission is more important than the consequences. As we look across ancient ruins and modern skylines, trembling beneath unstable skies, a haunting realization remains. The most dangerous villains aren't those who know they are wrong. They are the ones who never question that they are right. When belief becomes armor, truth can't get in. Unless humanity learns to doubt its own hero stories, to listen before enforcing, and to remember before repeating, the future will excavate our era just as we study the past. They'll uncover evidence of our certainty, our control, and our catastrophe. I wonder how so many of us believed we were saving the world, while quietly destroying it. Piece by piece, without ever looking back. Thanks for watching. Ever wondered why empires that saw themselves as heroes often ended up as villains in history books? It all starts with conviction. As empires grew, personal beliefs hardened into state doctrine. Leaders surrounded themselves with advisors who echoed their heroic narrative, and suddenly, any disagreement was seen as betrayal. To question the mission was to threaten the very identity of the state. Ancient records show a chilling pattern. Education, art, even religious rituals were all redesigned to glorify sacrifice and erase any doubt. Texts that warned against arrogance or imbalance were deliberately destroyed. It wasn't ignorance, it was intentional. Admitting limits would have weakened their authority, and that authority was their answer to a world spiraling into chaos from climate shifts, migration, and scarce resources. Archaeology tells us the grim aftermath. We find mass graves, cities burned to the ground, and trade routes that just stop. These grand campaigns for salvation often just sped up the collapse they were meant to prevent. When reality didn't match their prophecies, leaders didn't question their ideology. They just doubled down on control. They believed failure only meant they hadn't used enough force. We've found ancient maps showing borders that expanded with incredible speed, only to vanish just as quickly. This suggests these heroic stories were just a mask for deep instability. The so-called villains, they thought history would prove them right, mistaking dominance for a lasting legacy. To maintain this heroic self-image, history had to be written. Successors edited the chronicles, created martyrs, and blamed disasters on outsiders or divine tests anything to avoid admitting their own brutality. This pattern isn't just ancient history. Modern technology, like satellite images and digital archives, now exposes these old lies, revealing erased settlements and restoring censored voices. Yet, the fight over interpretation continues. Why? Because admitting that villains genuinely believed they were heroes forces us to see uncomfortable parallels in our own world. Surveillance, propaganda, and absolute moral certainty are still used today to justify causing harm. The machinery of righteousness didn't disappear. It just evolved. Today, we face similar challenges. Climate instability, resource pressure. And just like in the past, some leaders respond by invoking destiny, nationalism, or ideological purity. They frame aggression and exclusion as necessary protection, echoing those ancient rulers who saw themselves as the only shield against chaos. The parallels are unsettling, because history shows us this path usually ends in collapse. Yet, the belief that this time is different persists. This leaves us with a difficult truth. Villainy often isn't born from malice, but from absolute, unchallenged certainty. The most dangerous people are those who never question their own righteousness, who see destruction as a form of creation and suffering as just a necessary cost. As history keeps resurfacing through ruins and data, The real question isn't just about who the villains were. It's about how isly we build, protect, and repeat these hero stories.